Death is merely a statistic, Captain Jarvis stated with a nonchalant air as he stepped over the still smouldering corpse of a Shulmaran warrior. His words, delivered with such cavalier disregard, sent shockwaves through the assembled alien dignitaries. Captain Jarvis, a rugged man with a scarred face and eyes hardened by countless experiences, seemed oblivious to the effect his words had on the gathered alien representatives. He continued forward, the human contingent following in perfect unison, their expressions as impassive as their leaders. The scene unfolded in the Grand Hall of Unity on the planet Azar, where delegates from various star systems had assembled to discuss recent border skirmishes. The Shulmaran, a proud and warlike race, had been particularly vocal in opposing human expansion into what they considered their territory. Tensions were high, but no one had anticipated the conference would begin with a death, or rather, with the humans' casual treatment of it. High Chancellor Xian, a towering figure with deep-set, multifaceted eyes, struggled to maintain his composure. Captain Jarvis, you have just stepped over the body of one of our finest warriors. Does this not concern you? Jarvis paused and turned to face the Chancellor, a hint of a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. Concern me? No, Chancellor Xian, it does not. Death is an inevitability. It's not something we humans fear. Murmurs rippled through the hall as the various alien species exchanged glances, their different forms of communication, whispers, pheromone releases, and light flashes, blending into a cacophony of shock and confusion. One particularly agitated voice cut through the din. General Krill, a Sharon with a fierce reputation and a physique that seemed more weapon than body, stepped forward. His spiked exoskeleton gleamed under the hall's lights, and his mandibles clicked angrily. Humans may not fear death, but they should respect it. You cannot simply dismiss the loss of life so lightly. Jarvis met the general's glare without flinching. Respect, perhaps? Fear, never. You see, General, humans have a peculiar relationship with death. It's not that we seek it out, but we don't let it dictate our actions either. We understand it's a part of life, something that comes for everyone, and we've learned to live with that knowledge. The general's mandibles opened and closed rapidly, a sign of deep agitation. You speak as if you are above it all, as if your lives are less precious than ours. Jarvis's smirk grew into a full grin. Not less precious, General, just less fragile. At this, the hall erupted into a full-blown uproar. The idea that humans did not fear death was not only alien but deeply disturbing to most of the species present. For the Shulmaran, whose society was built on a strict code of honor and respect for the fallen, this casual attitude was almost blasphemous. The High Chancellor raised a hand, calling for order. Slowly, the noise died down, but the tension in the room was palpable. Captain Jarvis, perhaps you would enlighten us further. How is it that humans can face death without fear? Jarvis's face turned serious. It's a long story, Chancellor, rooted in our history and evolution. But the short version is this: humans are survivors. We've faced extinction countless times, through war, disease, natural disasters, and we've come out stronger each time. We've learned that fear of death only hinders us, makes us weak. So we embrace it, not as an end but as a part of the journey. A thin, wiry figure with greyish skin and elongated limbs, representing the Zori, a species known for their philosophical wisdom, interjected. But without fear of death, how do you value life? How do you find meaning? Jarvis nodded thoughtfully. That's a fair question. We value life because it's fleeting. Each moment is precious because it could be our last. This drives us to achieve, to explore, to push boundaries. The lack of fear doesn't diminish the value of life, it enhances it. We're not reckless, we simply refuse to be paralyzed by the inevitable. General Krill's eyes narrowed. Then perhaps it is time to test this lack of fear. He gestured to one of his guards, who brought forward a device that looked ominously like an execution tool. Will you face this, human? Before Jarvis could respond, a young soldier from his contingent stepped forward. Allow me, sir. The soldier, barely out of his teens but with the hard look of a seasoned warrior, faced the general. I am Private First Class Michael Hayes, and I volunteer. The room fell silent as Hayes stood resolute. The device hummed to life, its purpose clear and deadly. Without hesitation, Hayes placed his hand on it, and a bright flash filled the room. When the light faded, Hayes stood unharmed, a slight burn on his hand the only evidence of the device's power. General Krill looked at the human soldier with a mixture of respect and confusion. Why did you volunteer? Do you not value your life? Hayes met his gaze steadily. I value my life, General, but I value my comrades, my mission, and my species more. Death is just a part of the duty. Captain Jarvis stepped forward, placing a hand on Hayes's shoulder. You see, General, Chancellor, it's not that we don't value life, we just don't fear death. It's a subtle difference, but it makes all the difference in the universe. As the human contingent continued to the negotiation table, the aliens present were left to ponder this shocking revelation. The humans were unlike any species they had encountered before, and in the back of everyone's mind, a single thought lingered: if humans did not fear death, what else were they capable of? The room remained tense, the weight of the humans' revelation hanging heavily in the air. Captain Jarvis, standing tall and unyielding, eyed the assembly with a mix of defiance and anticipation. He knew that the impact of their philosophy had only just begun to sink in. High Chancellor Zion, striving to maintain control of the situation, cleared his throat. Captain Jarvis, Private Hayes, your demonstrations are enlightening. However, understanding your mindset does not necessarily mean we accept it. The Shulmaran and our allies believe that the fear of death is what keeps societies in check, maintaining order and preventing chaos. Jarvis nodded. We understand your perspective, Chancellor, but our history has taught us differently. We believe that facing death head-on makes us stronger, more resilient. It's a fundamental part of what makes us human. General Krill's mandibles clicked sharply. Perhaps it is time to put your resilience to the test in a more substantial manner. The room fell silent again as Krill's words hung ominously in the air. Jarvis could sense the shift. The negotiations were veering away from diplomacy and towards potential conflict. He had expected this. Humans, with their unpredictable and tenacious nature, were often met with resistance and hostility from other species. We are always ready to prove ourselves, General, Jarvis replied evenly. But understand this, we do not seek unnecessary conflict. Our aim is not conquest but survival and growth. If a test is what you demand, then a test you shall have, but it will not be on your terms alone. Zion raised a placating hand. Let us not be hasty. We are here to find a solution, not to escalate tensions. However, if it is a demonstration of human resilience that you seek, General, we must agree on the parameters. The Grand Hall's atmosphere grew more electric with each passing moment. Delegates from other species whispered among themselves, their curiosity piqued by the impending challenge. The Shulmaran, with their warrior culture, seemed eager to see the humans tested in a more comprehensive manner. We propose a series of trials, General Krill declared. 3 challenges that will test not just your lack of fear, but your skill, endurance, and determination. If you succeed, perhaps we will reconsider our stance on your expansion. If you fail, you will leave our territories and never return. Jarvis exchanged a glance with his second-in-command, Lieutenant Harris. Harris, a stoic man with a sharp mind and a talent for strategy, gave a slight nod. "We accept your challenge, General, but be warned, we will not back down, and we will not be underestimated." The alien assembly buzzed with renewed interest. The tension was palpable as the details of the trials were quickly ironed out. The first trial would test physical endurance and combat prowess, the second would focus on strategy and intelligence, and the third, a test of survival in the harshest conditions the Shulmaran could devise. The first trial was set to begin immediately. The Grand Hall transformed into a Colosseum-like arena, with alien spectators filling the seats. At the center, a series of combat obstacles and various weapons awaited the contenders. Jarvis and his team prepared themselves, donning lightweight combat armor and checking their equipment. General Krill stood at the edge of the arena, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. "The first trial will test your combat skills against some of our finest warriors. You must defeat them to proceed." Jarvis nodded, stepping into the arena with Hayes and Harris flanking him. The Shulmaran, towering and imposing with their exoskeletal armor and deadly weapons, entered from the opposite side. The tension was thick, the crowd silent with anticipation. A horn sounded, and the trial began. The Shulmaran charged with a ferocity that would have broken the resolve of most species, but the humans stood their ground. Hayes, quick and agile, dodged the first blow and countered with precision, his combat knife finding a gap in the Shulmaran's armor. Harris, methodical and strategic, used the environment to his advantage, disarming and disabling his opponents with calculated efficiency. Jarvis faced off against General Krill himself. The two warriors circled each other, their movements a dance of death. Krill's strikes were powerful, each blow capable of crushing bone, but Jarvis was faster. He parried, dodged, and struck with surgical precision. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Jarvis disarmed Krill and forced him to yield. The horn sounded again, signaling the end of the first trial. The humans had won, their resilience and combat skills undeniable. But the victory was met with a cold, calculating gaze from the Sharon leaders. This was only the beginning. The first trial was set to commence instantly, the Grand Hall morphing into a Colosseum-like arena, alien spectators filling the stands with eager anticipation. At the center, a complex array of combat obstacles and an assortment of weapons awaited the contenders. Jarvis and his team prepared meticulously, donning lightweight combat armor and rigorously checking their gear. General Krill positioned himself at the arena's edge, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. "The first trial will evaluate your combat prowess against some of our finest warriors. To advance, you must defeat them." Jarvis gave a nod of acknowledgement, stepping into the arena with Hayes and Harris flanking him. The Shulmaran, towering and formidable in their exoskeletal armor and brandishing lethal weapons, entered from the opposing side. The atmosphere was electric, the crowd hushed with expectation. A resonant horn signaled the start of the trial. The Shulmaran charged with a ferocity that would have shattered the resolve of most species, but the humans held their ground. Hayes, swift and agile, deftly avoided the first assault and countered with precision, his combat knife finding its mark in the Shulmaran's armor. Harris, deliberate and strategic, exploited the environment to his advantage, methodically disarming and incapacitating his adversaries. Jarvis engaged in a duel with General Krill himself. The two warriors circled each other, their movements a lethal ballet. Krill's strikes were thunderous, each blow powerful enough to break bones, but Jarvis was quicker. He parried, evaded, and struck with unerring accuracy. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Jarvis disarmed Krill, forcing him to concede. The horn sounded once more, marking the end of the first trial. The humans had emerged victorious, their resilience and combat skills indisputable. However, their triumph was met with cold, calculating stares from the Sharon leaders. This was merely the beginning. As the humans regrouped, tending to minor injuries and preparing for the next challenge, the mood in the arena shifted. The alien spectators, once filled with skepticism and disdain, now observed with a mix of respect and caution. The humans had proven their mettle, but the true test was yet to come. Lieutenant Harris approached Jarvis, his expression grim. The next trial will be tougher. They're going to test our intellect and strategy. We need to be ready for anything. Jarvis nodded, determination etched on his face. We've come this far. We'll show them what it means to be human. The preparations for the second trial began in earnest. The humans steeled themselves for the challenges ahead, knowing that the road to proving their worth would be fraught with danger and uncertainty. But they also knew they would face it together, unyielding and unafraid. The trials were far from over, and the humans were just getting started. The arena buzzed with anticipation as the humans readied themselves for the second trial. The first test had demonstrated their physical prowess and fearlessness in combat, but now their intellect and strategic acumen were to be scrutinized. Captain Jarvis and his team gathered in their designated area, eyes scanning their surroundings for any clues about the upcoming challenge. High Chancellor Zian's voice echoed through the arena. The second trial is a test of intelligence and strategy. You will face a series of puzzles and tactical scenarios designed to test your problem-solving abilities and strategic thinking. Success in this trial will require not just brute strength, but cunning and ingenuity. Jarvis exchanged a glance with Harris and Hayes. They knew this trial would be different, but they also knew their strengths. Humans had always been adaptable, able to think on their feet and devise creative solutions under pressure. The first puzzle was a labyrinth, a complex maze with shifting walls and hidden traps. The goal was to navigate through it and retrieve a key hidden at its center. The maze was known for confounding even the brightest minds among the alien species, and its shifting nature added an element of unpredictability. Stay close and keep moving, Jarvis instructed. We need to find the key quickly before the maze changes again. They entered the maze, their movements synchronized and efficient. Harris took the lead, his analytical mind working quickly to map out potential paths. Hayes watched for traps, his keen eyes catching signs of danger. Jarvis guided his team with a steady hand, instilling confidence in their every move. Minutes felt like hours as they navigated the twisting corridors. The walls shifted periodically, forcing them to backtrack and find new routes. But their persistence paid off. Harris's quick thinking and Jarvis's leadership brought them to the center, where Hayes retrieved the key just as the maze began to change again. With the key in hand, they exited the maze to a round of applause from the audience. The humans had passed the first part of the second trial, but they knew the real challenge was yet to come. The next scenario was a tactical simulation, a holographic battlefield where they were to lead a small unit against a superior force. The objective was not just to survive, but to achieve a decisive victory using strategy and cunning. The Shulmaran had designed the simulation to be nearly impossible, intending to expose any weaknesses in the human approach. Jarvis studied the holographic map, noting the enemy positions and terrain. We'll use guerrilla tactics, hit and run, ambushes, and misinformation. We can't beat them head-on, but we can outthink them. They divided their forces, setting up ambush points and decoys. The simulation began, and the humans executed their plan with precision. Hayes led a feint, drawing the enemy into a trap where Harris and his unit were waiting. The ambush was swift and effective, taking out a significant portion of the enemy forces. Jarvis coordinated their movements, adapting the plan as the battle unfolded. The holographic enemies were relentless, but the humans' adaptability and ingenuity turned the tide. They used the terrain to their advantage, setting traps and luring the enemy into disadvantageous positions. As the final enemy unit fell, the simulation ended, and the arena erupted in cheers. The humans had once again demonstrated their resilience and strategic brilliance. They had passed the second trial, but the hardest part was still ahead. The arena buzzed with anticipation as the humans prepared for the second trial. The first test had showcased their physical prowess and fearlessness in combat, but now their intellect and strategic acumen were under scrutiny. Captain Jarvis and his team assembled in their designated area, eyes scanning the surroundings for any hints about the forthcoming challenge. High Chancellor Xian's voice resonated through the arena. The second trial is a test of intelligence and strategy. You will face a series of puzzles and tactical scenarios designed to assess your problem-solving abilities and strategic thinking. Success in this trial will require not just brute strength, but cunning and ingenuity. Jarvis exchanged a glance with Harris and Hayes. They understood this trial would be different, but they also knew their strengths. Humans had always been adaptable, able to think on their feet and devise creative solutions under pressure. The first puzzle was a labyrinth, a complex maze with shifting walls and concealed traps. The objective was to navigate through it and retrieve a key hidden at its center. The maze was notorious for baffling even the brightest minds among the alien species, and its shifting nature added an element of unpredictability. "Stay close and keep moving," Jarvis instructed. "We need to find the key quickly before the maze changes again." They entered the maze, their movements synchronized and efficient. Harris took the lead, his analytical mind rapidly mapping out potential paths. Hayes watched for traps, his keen eyes detecting signs of danger. Jarvis led with confidence, guiding his team with a steady hand. Minutes felt like hours as they navigated the twisting corridors. The walls shifted periodically, forcing them to backtrack and find new routes. But their persistence paid off. Harris's quick thinking and Jarvis's leadership brought them to the center, where Hayes retrieved the key just as the maze began to change again. With the key in hand, they exited the maze to a round of applause from the audience. The humans had passed the first part of the second trial, but they knew the real challenge was yet to come. The next scenario was a tactical simulation, a holographic battlefield where they were to lead a small unit against a superior force. The objective was not just to survive, but to achieve a decisive victory using strategy and cunning. The Shulmaran had designed the simulation to be nearly impossible, intending to expose any weaknesses in the human approach. Jarvis studied the holographic map, noting the enemy positions and terrain. "We'll use guerrilla tactics, hit and run, ambushes, and misinformation. We can't beat them head-on, but we can outthink them." They divided their forces, setting up ambush points and decoys. The simulation began, and the humans executed their plan with precision. Hayes led a feint, drawing the enemy into a trap where Harris and his unit were waiting. The ambush was swift and effective, taking out a significant portion of the enemy forces. Jarvis coordinated their movements, adapting the plan as the battle unfolded. The holographic enemies were relentless, but the humans' adaptability and ingenuity turned the tide. They used the terrain to their advantage, setting traps and luring the enemy into disadvantageous positions. As the final enemy unit fell, the simulation ended, and the arena erupted in cheers. The humans had once again demonstrated their resilience and strategic brilliance. They had passed the second trial, but the hardest part was still ahead. The final trial would be a test of survival, the Shulmaran choosing a harsh, uninhabitable environment for this ultimate challenge. The goal was simple: survive for 24 hours with limited supplies and constant hazards. The humans were transported to the moon's surface, their surroundings desolate and unforgiving. The air was thin, the temperature extreme, and the landscape dotted with crumbling structures and dangerous wildlife. It was a place where only the strongest could endure. "We need to find shelter and secure a source of water," Jarvis said, his voice steady. "Stay alert and stay together." They moved quickly, scavenging for supplies and avoiding the local predators. Harris found an abandoned building that provided some shelter while Hayes rigged a rudimentary water filtration system using scavenged parts. Jarvis kept watch, his senses honed by years of survival training. Hours passed, each one testing their limits. They faced constant threats, roving predators, environmental hazards, and the oppressive isolation, but they never wavered. Their training and their bond as a team kept them focused and determined. As the 24-hour mark approached, they were exhausted but alive. They had proven their ability to survive in even the harshest conditions. When the transport arrived to take them back to the arena, they were greeted with awe and respect. The humans had passed all 3 trials, their resilience and fearlessness undeniable. Back in the Grand Hall of Unity, High Chancellor Zion addressed the assembly. "The humans have demonstrated their strength, intelligence, and resilience. They have passed our trials, showing us that they are indeed a force to be reckoned with. However, this does not change our stance on their expansion. We remain opposed and will defend our territories if necessary." General Krill stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Captain Jarvis, you and your men have earned my respect. But know this, our differences remain. There will be no peace between us, only an uneasy truce. We will meet again, perhaps on the battlefield, and we will see who truly has no fear of death." Jarvis met Krill's gaze, his own eyes filled with steely resolve. "We understand, General, and we will be ready." As the humans departed, the tension in the hall was palpable. The trials had proven their capabilities, but it had also solidified the alien resolve against them. The road ahead would be fraught with conflict, but the humans were prepared to face whatever challenges came their way, unafraid and unyielding. The final trial was the ultimate test of endurance, with the Shulmaran selecting an unforgiving, barren moon as the setting. The objective was straightforward: survive for 24 hours with minimal supplies while facing relentless hazards. The humans were transported to the moon's surface, a desolate and inhospitable landscape. The air was thin, the temperature extreme, and the terrain littered with crumbling structures and hostile wildlife. It was a place where only the toughest could endure. "We need to locate shelter and secure a water source," Jarvis instructed, his voice calm but firm. "Stay vigilant and stick together." They moved swiftly, scavenging for essential supplies and steering clear of local predators. Harris discovered an abandoned building that offered some protection, while Hayes ingeniously constructed a rudimentary water filtration system from scavenged parts. Jarvis maintained a constant watch, his senses sharpened by years of survival training. Hours dragged by, each one pushing them to their limits. They faced a barrage of threats, prowling predators, environmental dangers, and the crushing isolation, but they remained undeterred. Their rigorous training and strong camaraderie kept them focused and resolute. As the 24-hour deadline approached, they were worn out but still standing. They had demonstrated their capacity to survive in the harshest conditions imaginable. When the transport arrived to return them to the arena, they were met with admiration and respect. The humans had conquered all 3 trials, their resilience and fearlessness unmistakable. Back in the Grand Hall of Unity, High Chancellor Zion addressed the assembly. "The humans have exhibited extraordinary strength, intelligence, and resilience. They have triumphed in our trials, proving themselves to be a formidable force. However, our stance on their expansion remains unchanged. We are still opposed and will defend our territories if necessary." General Krill stepped forward, his expression inscrutable. "Captain Jarvis, you and your men have earned my respect. Yet, our differences persist. There will be no peace between us, only a fragile truce. We shall meet again, perhaps on the battlefield, to see who truly has no fear of death." Jarvis met Krill's gaze, his own eyes reflecting steely determination. "We understand, General, and we will be ready." As the humans departed, the tension in the hall was palpable. The trials had proven their capabilities, but they had also cemented the alien resolve against them. The path ahead would be filled with conflict, but the humans were prepared to face any challenges that arose, unafraid and unwavering.